Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by, as always. My piece over the weekend was a little bit apocalyptic. Do you remember that movie Apocalypse Now? I used to always struggle with the pronunciation of it. My article was called War is Coming, and I also put it on YouTube as well. And I think it's worth listening to because I've given it a lot of thought. Increasingly, I think the likelihood is moving significantly on the continuum. Home thoughts, I kind of entered a wormhole of Rabindranath Tagore. A mind all logic is like a knife all blade. It makes the hand bleed that uses it. A little diversion, beautiful sighting of this young male leopard in the Savo. You never know what you will encounter. An African safari, that's Finch Hatton's. Tagore, I thought this was powerful. Men are cruel, but man is kind. Patriotism cannot be our final spiritual shelter. My refuge is humanity. I will not buy glass for the price of diamonds, and I will never allow patriotism to triumph over humanity as long as I live. I really enjoyed most of his writing, but particularly his short stories, which are like jewels, but oftentimes bittersweet. An example is this one. Barich is a lovely place. The suster chatters over stony ways and babbles on the pebbles, tripping like a skillful dancing girl in through the woods below the lonely hills. A flight of 150 steps rises from the river, and above that flight, on the river's brim and at the foot of the hills, there stands a solitary marble palace. Around it there is no habitation of man, the village and the cotton mart of Barich being far off. About 250 years ago, the Emperor Mahmud Shah II had built this lonely palace for his pleasure and luxury. In his days, jets of rose water spurted from its fountains, and the cold marble floors of its spray-cooled rooms young Persian damsels would sit, their hair dishevelled before bathing and splashing their soft naked feet. The clear water of the reservoirs would sing to the tune of the guitar, the guzzles of their vineyards. The fountains play no longer, the songs have ceased. No longer do snow-white feet step gracefully on the snowy marble. It is but the vast and solitary quarters of cess collectors like us, men oppressed with solitude and deprived of the society of women. Now Karim Khan, the old clerk of my office, warned me repeatedly not to take up my abode there. Pass the day there if you like, said he, but never stay the night. I passed it off with a light laugh. The servants said they would work till dark and go away at night. I gave my ready assent. The house had such a bad name that even thieves would not venture near it after dark. At first the solitude of the deserted palace weighed upon me like a nightmare. I would stay out and work as hard as possible and as long as possible, then return home at night jaded and tired, go to bed and fall asleep. Before a week had passed, the place began to exert a weird fascination upon me. It is difficult to describe or to induce people to believe, but I felt as if the whole house was like a living organism, slowly and imperceptibly digesting me by the action of some stupefying gastric juice. Perhaps the process had begun as soon as I set my foot in the house, but I distinctly remember the day on which I was first conscious of it. It was the beginning of summer, and the market being dull, I had no work to do. A little before sunset, I was sitting in an armchair near the water's edge below the steps. The suster had shrunk and sunk low A broad patch of sand on the other side glowed with the hues of evening. On this side, the pebbles at the bottom of the clear, shallow waters were glistening. There was not a breath of wind anywhere, and the still air was laden with an oppressive scent from the spicy shrubs growing on the hills close by. As the sun sank behind the hilltops, a long, dark curtain fell upon the stage of day, and the intervening hills cut short the time in which light and shade mingle at sunset. I thought of going out for a ride and was bound to get up when I heard a footfall on the steps behind. I looked back, but there was no one. As I sat down again, thinking to be an illusion, I heard many footfalls, as if a large number of persons were rushing down the steps. A strange thrill of delight, slightly tinged with fear, passed through my frame. And though there was not a figure before my eyes, methought I saw a bevy of joyous maidens coming down the steps to bathe in the Susta in that summer evening. Not a sound was in the valley, in the river, or in the palace to break the silence, but I distinctly heard the maidens' gay and mirthful laugh, like the gurgle of a spring gushing forth in 100 cascades as they ran past me in quick, playful pursuit of each other towards the river without noticing me at all. As they were invisible to me, so I was, as it were, invisible to them. The river was perfectly calm, but I felt that its still, shallow, and clear waters were stirred suddenly by the splash of many an arm jingling with bracelets, that the girls laughed and dashed and spattered water at one another, that the feet of the fair swimmers tossed the tiny waves up in showers of pearl. Like fragrance wafted away by the wind, they were dispersed by a single breath of the spring. Got to read it, it's fantastic. You see what I mean about being bittersweet, don't you? When Einstein met Tagore, a remarkable meeting of minds on the edge of science and spirituality. Einstein, do you believe in the divine as isolated from the world? Tagore, not isolated. The infinite personality of man comprehends the universe. There cannot be anything that cannot be subsumed by the human personality, and this proves that the truth of the universe is human truth. Final quote, death is not extinguishing the light, it is only putting out the lamp because the dawn has come. He's an extraordinary gentleman. Going back to what I wrote over the weekend, which is war is coming, I said if one is to criticize Barack Obama, one would criticize him for being incredibly supine in the teeth of China's salami slicing. And I said about Trump, the method in his madness is the triangulation of China and a serious ratcheting higher of pressure. Xi is looking more brittle. US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Peter Navarro have operated with surgical precision and have introduced an anti-dragon clause, which I was referring to in the article. I also said that the incident with the USS Decatur, where a Chinese warship came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur in the South China Sea, is surely a precursor. I said B-52s are buzzing China practically daily. Secretary Pompeo and King Salman met for less than 15 minutes, apparently. I'd take you back to that comment I made that the King of Saudi Arabia serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States. That was agreed on February 1945, when Roosevelt met with King Abdulaziz of Saudi Arabia in person aboard the USS Quincy. This photograph, Pompeo is seen arriving in Saudi Arabia for meetings with Salman, the Crown Prince, and the Foreign Minister Al-Jubeir. In that same article over the weekend, I said crude oil is battling a very precarious geopolitical situation, with the biggest supplier of crude oil to the world markets, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, signaling loud and clear that its wannabe king is simply not tenable. He was already unconscionable, I know. Watch this interview on Fox and Friends where Lindsey Graham describes the Saudi crown prince as this. MBS figure is toxic. He can never be a world leader. This guy's got to go. It's a wrecking ball. He had this guy murdered in a consulate in Turkey and expect me to ignore it. I feel used and abused. According to the Daily Mail, Jamal Khashoggi was butchered, still alive. Took 7 minutes to die after being attacked in the Saudi Consul General's study desk. Horrific audio of his murder reveals. A source claimed to have heard the audio recording of Khashoggi's dying moments. He was dismembered while still alive on October 2nd. He can be heard screaming in the horrifying recording. Was said to have fallen silent on the tape as he was given an injection. People downstairs in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul reportedly heard screams. Turkey said Tuesday they found certain evidence he was killed in the building. A Turkish official also claimed police believe Khashoggi was dismembered. Saudi consul flew out of Turkey hours before his residence was to be searched. The US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, went to Saudi to talk with the King and Crown Prince, as we know. According to a source who claimed to have heard a recording of his last moments, Khashoggi was murdered after walking the building. I've already said he was unconscionable, he's now untenable. I take you back to Richard Kapuscinski. The choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history. It is authority that provokes revolution. This occurs when a feeling of impunity takes root among the elite. We are allowed anything, we can do anything. This is a delusion, but it rests on a certain rational foundation. For a while, it does indeed look as if you can do anything. Whatever they want, scandal after scandal, illegality after illegality go unpunished. The people remain silent. They are afraid and do not yet feel their own strength. At the same time, they keep a detailed account of the wrongs, which at one particular moment are to be added up. The choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history. November last year, I wrote, the paranoia in the palaces in Saudi Arabia is real and existential. I see the pivot to Asia as the encirclement of China, then the shrinking of its operating theatre, and then lighting the tinderbox that is the periphery. And Xinjiang, I said, might well turn into China's Afghanistan. I said China has been stuffing the residents of Xinjiang with pork, locking them up in internment camps and brainwashing them in order to prevent that outcome I was describing. China has fiercely defended an escalating crackdown in the western province of Xinjiang as necessary for security, claiming inmates of re-education camps are happier following their imprisonment. Survivors of the camps have described their experiences as a deliberate attempt by Beijing to strangle Uyghur culture and stamp out the Muslim faith. There is a further big interview with the Xinjiang chief on terrorism education and training on Xinhua News via China Plus. I observed this morning, it seems that for all Bibi's bluster, Vladimir has shut him out of Syrian airspace. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 115.57, dollar index 95.16, Japanese yen 112.23, Swiss franc 0.9915, the pound 131.74, the Aussie is at 0.7137, India rupee 73.435, South Korean won 11.2521, the Rial 375.23, Egyptian pound 17.9095, South African rand 14.7152. The dollar index is last at 95.16. My target remains 100. Euro dollar last at 115.57. My target remains parity. Netflix jumped 17% in after hours trading following a whopping subscriber numbers. Has gained 96% this year, including Tuesday's post-earnings move. It was my second recommended trade of the year on July the 18th. July the 17th, it wobbled 14% in after hours trading. And I said you had to buy that. on that day. It crushed estimates. The streaming TV giant added 6.96 million users in the third quarter, topping the 5.09 million projection. Commodity markets, gold lost at 1222.50. Look at this chart from T Commodity. He went short and he called it. Crude oil, $71.86. But as I wrote previously, and this has been confirmed in an article that I came across, Trump and the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, this is from Colombia. No US president wants to see gasoline prices rise as they head into an election, rolling up to the 2018 midterms in November, which already pose a threat to Republican control of Congress. That is precisely what President Trump is facing. Should oil markets be on the lookout for an October surprise from Washington aimed at easing consumers' pain at the pumps? And saying that basically the tool the administration has is the use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And that's what I was referring to when I said on the 1st of October, therefore I venture he will be tempted to unload supply out of the US Special Reserve, and therefore bulls need to be wary of a precipitous downside draft. I said he is of course facing a problematic midterm election, and the last thing he wants are angry consumers at the polling stations. Therefore, I venture he will be tempted to unload supply out of the US Special Reserve, and bulls need to be wary of a precipitous downside draft on that announcement, which might well wash out everybody. The announcement will be the starting gun for folks who have the guts to catch a falling knife, because it will prove momentary and fleeting. Copper looks unable to break above the 100-day moving average and testing the 25-day moving average. Not that good for bulls. I'm a bear because of this scenario I painted of the China-America escalation. Sub-Saharan Africa, the Abiy revolution continues with a new cabinet that is 50% women, including the first woman Minister of Defense in Ethiopian history. I wrote about him after about 100 days or 90 days, and I said these 90 or so days represent the most consequential arrival of an African politician on the African stage since Mandela walked out of prison blinking in the sunlight. I said he's a Virillian and Gladwellian figure. To create one contagious movement, this is Gladwell, you have often to create many small movements first. Look at the world around you. It may seem like an immovable, implacable place. It is not. With the slightest push in just the right place, it can be tipped. This is his new cabinet, downsized the number of ministerial positions to 20. Women compose 50% of that cabinet. They have been assigned to run peace, trade and industry, and defense. Ethiopia's Prime Minister names Ahmed Shide as the finance minister. Is Angola really open for business? Asked African BizMag. Talking about the IMF attributed the change in Angola's fortunes to policies implemented by Lourenço that have reduced deficits being run by the state and parastatals and encouraged inward investment. Aside from convincing international oil giants to recommit to Africa's second largest producer, which will create a multiplier effect on other sectors of the economy. Interesting article in talking about how it's positive that the IMF program is going to be in play. Investors are welcome in Zambia, says President Lungu. We shall see off all these lies and innuendos. Our management of the economy and public finances is based on laid down systems and guided by sound fundamentals, he said. Moody's Investor Services has rated South Africa at Baa3, one rung above junk status with a stable outlook. But they're saying ratings would be downgraded if prospects to revive growth falter, if government cannot stabilize its debt burden and contingent liabilities from SOEs. South African all shares down 10.53% year to date. Dollar versus rand has strengthened to 14.174. You can resell that at 14. Nigerian all shares down 14.44% year to date. Ghana plans to support a century bond with its rising oil revenue. Ghana will issue $3 billion to $7 billion of the securities every year that will be sustained through income from its stakes in offshore fields, which is forecast to double to $1 billion over the next 5 years, Ofori Atta told a conference on Monday. Last month, he said the country is preparing to sell $5 to $10 billion of century bonds before the end of the year, at a time when rising US rates are making investors wary of emerging market debt. I had him in mind when I said there are no more quaaludes, and policymakers will no longer be able to pop them. In prescribed doses, quaaludes promotes relaxation, sleepiness, sometimes a feeling of euphoria. It causes a drop in blood pressure and slows the pulse rate. These properties are the reason why it was initially thought to be a useful sedative and anxiolytic. It became a recreational drug due to its euphoric effect. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 10.51% year to date. Dear God, tweeted Wamathai, read what he's referencing. You can see he is indeed correct. Nairobi all shares down 15.7% year to date, but bounced yesterday as Safaricom rebounded. 24th of September, I wrote a piece, bears roam the Nairobi Securities Exchange and the number of zombies grows. Ramanyang, interesting day, that's yesterday. The NSE 20 closed at 2,749.34 points. Lowest on a year-to-date basis? Yes. Lowest over 12 months? Yes. Lowest point in 5 years? Absolutely. And it shed 44% since October 2013. The NSE 20 is down 25.93% year-to-date. Kenol is giving a 906 million share offer to its CEO, David Ohana. That is equivalent to a dilution of about 5% when you include the fact that they're also giving shares to the ESOP. Kenya's entertainment media industry to hit 2.9 billion by 2022, says PricewaterhouseCoopers. But look at this, Nation Media set a new 52-week low when it reached 65. The share price is down 40% over this period. That sums it up in the case of Nation. Well, rudderless.